Is the cooler secure, Luke?
Solid. Hey, Cole, where are we stopping first?
I found a spot near this peak. It looks perfect.
In the summer of 2015, a trio of identical brothers from Billings, Montana, embarked on an extraordinary expedition to mark their 22nd year. Their adventure led them into the heart of the Glacier National Park wilderness. Jake, Luke, and Cole Brennan had been an inseparable unit since their arrival into the world. Their shared physical likeness was only surpassed by a profound connection that had established them as local figures of note in their close-knit community. The siblings were partners in their father's automotive service business, resided in the same apartment complex, and seldom experienced prolonged periods apart. Their objective was a straightforward 5-day camping excursion into the secluded Blackfoot Valley, offering opportunities for fishing, hiking, and respite from a relentless Montana heat wave that had persisted for weeks. On the 15th of July, 2015, the triplets meticulously loaded their silver Ford pickup truck with provisions for camping, fishing tackle, and enough sustenance for an entire week. Their mother, Linda Brennan, observed their departure from the front porch, her gaze filled with a mother's concern. Witnesses later recounted that she appeared unusually apprehensive that morning, repeatedly inquiring about their emergency radio and water supply. Jake, the de facto leader of the brothers, reassured her of their thorough preparedness. He had dedicated months to planning this journey, poring over topographical maps and meteorological forecasts. The brothers were seasoned campers in these mountains, having frequented them since their teenage years, and possessed an intimate knowledge of the terrain. The last verified sighting of the Brennan triplets occurred at Murphy's General Store in West Glacier at precisely 2:30 in the afternoon. Bill Murphy, the proprietor, later informed investigators that the young men appeared enthusiastic and well-equipped. They procured additional batteries for their flashlights, extra fishing line, and a bag of ice for their cooler. Mr. Murphy recalled their light-hearted banter about who would reel in the largest trout, each brother asserting his superior angling skills. They settled their purchases in cash, leaving no formal record, and proceeded northward towards the Blackfoot Valley Access Road. Their intended campsite was situated near Hidden Lake, a remote destination accessible solely via a narrow, unpaved track that meandered through dense pine forests for approximately 8 miles. This locale was renowned for its pristine fishing opportunities and its complete detachment from cellular service and conventional hiking routes. Park rangers seldom traversed this region on weekdays, making it an ideal sanctuary for those seeking tranquility. The brothers had camped in this very spot on 2 prior occasions and were well acquainted with the demanding topography and the capricious weather patterns that could rapidly materialize in the higher elevations. When the triplets failed to return home by the 20th of July, their scheduled departure date, their parents initially presumed they had opted to prolong their outing. The brothers were adults, demonstrating responsibility, and had occasionally extended their trips on previous camping adventures. However, when the 21st of July also passed without any communication, Linda Brennan contacted the Flathead County Sheriff's Office. Her sons had never abstained from contact for more than 2 days, and this prolonged silence was entirely contrary to their established behavior. Sheriff David Walsh assigned Deputy Rebecca Stone to investigate the missing persons report. Deputy Stone, a decade-long veteran with extensive expertise in wilderness search and rescue operations, immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. The simultaneous disappearance of 3 individuals in the Montana wilderness was an exceptionally rare occurrence, particularly given their experience as outdoorsmen and their familiarity with the area. She promptly assembled a preliminary search contingent and proceeded to the Blackfoot Valley that same afternoon. The triplets' pickup truck was discovered precisely where they had intended to park it, in a small clearing adjacent to the trailhead leading to Hidden Lake. The vehicle was unlocked, with the keys resting on the dashboard. Inside, investigators found the brothers' wallets containing their identification cards and a combined total of $340 in cash. Their mobile phones were located in the glove compartment, all exhibiting depleted batteries. The truck appeared undisturbed, showing no indications of a struggle or forced entry. Personal belongings were arranged tidily within the cab, suggesting the brothers had simply parked and departed on foot. Deputy Stone observed that the truck's placement implied careful foresight. It was parked in a shaded area away from the main thoroughfare and positioned for effortless egress. It was evident that the brothers had fully intended to return to this precise location. Tire tracks imprinted in the soft earth revealed no recent activity from other vehicles in the vicinity, thereby eliminating the possibility of an encounter with other campers or potential adversaries. The initial search commenced immediately, concentrating on the 3-mile trail connecting the parking area to Hidden Lake. A team comprising 6 rangers and several volunteers meticulously scoured the pathway, seeking any trace of the missing individuals. The trail itself was well-defined yet challenging, navigating rocky terrain and crossing 2 small streams. Search dogs were deployed from Kalispell, and they swiftly acquired the scent trail leading in the direction of the lake. Approximately halfway to Hidden Lake, the search party unearthed the first piece of evidence. A blue baseball cap, bearing the emblem of the Brennan family auto shop, was found suspended from a low-lying pine branch adjacent to the trail. The cap belonged to Cole, the youngest of the triplets, by 7 minutes. It appeared to have been deliberately placed rather than accidentally lost, as though intended as a marker. The fabric exhibited no signs of damage or evidence of a struggle. As the search progressed towards Hidden Lake, the canine unit abruptly lost the scent trail near a rocky escarpment overlooking a precipitous ravine. The area was thoroughly investigated, but no further evidence was uncovered. The scent simply evaporated, as if the 3 men had dematerialized into thin air. This phenomenon perplexed the seasoned search team, as scent trails typically dissipate gradually rather than cease abruptly. The search was amplified in the subsequent days with the arrival of additional contingents from neighboring counties. Helicopters conducted grid sweeps over the expansive wilderness, while ground teams explored every conceivable trail, creek bed, and potential encampment within a 10-mile radius. The Montana National Guard provided supplementary aircraft and personnel, elevating the operation into one of the most extensive search efforts in the state's recent history. Notwithstanding this colossal undertaking, no discernible trace of the Brennan triplets was ever located. There were no signs of discarded camping equipment, no footprints beyond the point where the scent trail terminated, and no disturbed vegetation, indicating that anyone had strayed from the established pathways. The search zone encompassed treacherous landscapes featuring hidden crevasses, swift-flowing waterways, and dense woodlands capable of easily concealing vital evidence. However, the absolute dearth of any trace was unusual, even under such demanding environmental conditions. Following 2 weeks of concentrated searching, the official operation was scaled back to intermittent aerial surveillance and volunteer ground patrols. The case remained open, but operational resources were reallocated to address other urgent matters. The Brennan family, however, refused to relinquish hope, organizing their own search expeditions and disseminating flyers throughout the region. Local media provided extensive coverage of the incident, and the perplexing disappearance of 3 identical brothers garnered widespread public attention across Montana and its neighboring states. The investigation yielded no evidence of foul play, no indications of financial distress, no relationship conflicts, and no discernible motive for the brothers to voluntarily vanish. Their financial accounts remained untouched. Their social media profiles displayed no unusual activity prior to the trip, and interviews with their associates and colleagues revealed nothing untoward. The triplets had been eagerly anticipating their camping excursion and had made plans for the subsequent weekend, appearing quite enthusiastic about them. As summer yielded to autumn, the case grew cold. The Brennan family convened a memorial service in October, though they steadfastly refused to officially declare their sons deceased. Linda Brennan maintained an unwavering conviction that her boys were alive, possibly injured and unable to make their way home. She preserved their apartment precisely as they had left it, continuing to pay the monthly rent in anticipation of their potential return. The auto repair shop remained shuttered, its window bearing a sign that read, "Gone fishing, back soon," which evolved into a local landmark and a somber reminder of the unsolved enigma. Winter snow enveloped the Blackfoot Valley, rendering further ground searches unfeasible until the arrival of spring. The case file accumulated numerous reports, witness testimonies, and search records, yet no new avenues of inquiry emerged. The Brennan triplets had simply evaporated without leaving any discernible evidence, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a family resolute in their persistent hope for resolution. The arrival of spring in 2016 rekindled hope for the Brennan family as the melting snow unveiled the Montana wilderness anew. Linda Brennan had spent the preceding winter months organizing volunteer search parties and meticulously studying every map of the Glacier National Park vicinity. She had become convinced that her sons were alive, perhaps injured and taking shelter in a cave or an abandoned cabin, awaiting rescue. Her husband, Tom Brennan, offered his support for her endeavors, though he privately grappled with the growing certainty that their boys were gone forever. Deputy Rebecca Stone recommenced the active search in May of 2016, coordinating efforts with park rangers and volunteer organizations. The winter had been exceptionally severe, with record snowfall that might have obscured evidence or altered the terrain. Stone expressed hope that the receding snow might unveil clues that had remained hidden during the previous year's search operations. New teams were constituted, including seasoned mountaineers and cave rescue specialists, who could access areas deemed too perilous during the initial investigation. The renewed search efforts were concentrated on regions that had been inaccessible during the winter months. Teams explored high-altitude zones, remote valleys, and cave systems prevalent in the mountainous landscape. Advanced ground-penetrating radar was employed to survey areas where the brothers might have fallen through thin ice or become trapped beneath rock slides. Every technological resource available to search and rescue operations was deployed in the earnest hope of uncovering some vestige of the missing triplets. During the second week of the spring search, volunteers discovered what appeared to be a piece of camping equipment near a secluded creek, approximately 4 miles from the location where the scent trail had abruptly ended. The item was a damaged camping stove, partially concealed beneath fallen logs and debris accumulated from winter storms. The stove was forwarded to the state crime laboratory for examination, but the results indicated it had been in the wilderness for several years and bore no connection to the disappearance of the Brennan brothers. As weeks elapsed without significant findings, the search teams began to encounter the same frustrating pattern that had emerged the preceding summer. Despite meticulously covering hundreds of square miles of wilderness, no conclusive evidence regarding the triplets' fate could be ascertained. The terrain was vast and unforgiving, presenting countless scenarios where 3 individuals could have encountered peril. Unstable rock formations and sudden meteorological shifts all posed potential hazards, even to experienced outdoorsmen. The media attention that had initially captivated the case began to wane as other narratives commanded public interest. Nevertheless, the Brennan family's resolve remained unwavering. Linda Brennan appeared on local television programs, imploring anyone with information to come forward. She offered a reward of $25,000 for information leading to her son's whereabouts, a sum the family had raised by selling their home and relocating to a more modest apartment. Tom Brennan returned to his work at the auto repair shop, keeping it operational as a tribute to his sons and a beacon of hope for their return. Customers frequently stopped by, not for mechanical services, but to offer solace and share their personal hypotheses concerning the triplets' disappearance. The shop transformed into an unofficial hub for ongoing search efforts, with maps adorning the walls and volunteer schedules posted near the cache. register throughout 2016 and into 2017. Periodic searches persisted whenever weather conditions permitted. Hiking groups and hunting parties were requested to remain vigilant for any signs of the missing men or their equipment. The case remained a subject of public discourse, particularly among outdoor enthusiasts who understood how easily one could vanish within Montana's extensive wilderness areas. Professional search and rescue experts began formulating theories about the possible fate of the Brennan triplets. Some posited that they might have been caught in a sudden meteorological event, such as a flash flood or an unexpected snowstorm, compelling them to seek refuge in an area difficult to locate. Others theorized that they might have fallen into one of the region's numerous hidden fissures or subterranean cave networks. The most disquieting theory, though seldom voiced openly, suggested that the brothers might have encountered an individual with malevolent intentions. While the area was remote, it was not entirely devoid of human activity. Illegal hunting, illicit drug operations, or individuals seeking to avoid detection could have posed a threat to the triplets. However, no evidence substantiated this theory, and the brothers' placid disposition rendered a violent confrontation improbable. As 2017 progressed, official search endeavors were reduced to sporadic helicopter overflights and appeals for hikers to report any unusual discoveries. The case remained officially open, but active investigation had effectively ceased. The Brennan family continued their independent search efforts, frequently spending weekends in the wilderness, calling out their sons' names and hoping for any indication that they were still alive. Linda Brennan's health began to decline under the immense strain of not knowing her son's fate. She developed insomnia and anxiety, enduring sleepless nights, studying satellite imagery of the search zones on her computer. Her friends and relatives expressed concern regarding her increasingly obsessive behavior. Yet she insisted that abandoning the search would equate to forsaking her boys when they needed her most. The second anniversary of their disappearance passed quietly in July of 2017. A modest memorial service was held at the trailhead where the brothers had commenced their final trek. Family members, friends, and volunteers gathered to commemorate Jake, Luke, and Cole Brennan, and to reaffirm their unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth. Flowers were placed at the base of a pine tree, and Linda Brennan read aloud a letter she had penned to her sons, vowing never to cease her search. By the autumn of 2017, even the most optimistic of supporters began to concede that the likelihood of finding the triplets alive was practically negligible. Nevertheless, the family's imperative need for closure remained as potent as ever. The uncertainty surrounding their son's fate constituted an agonizing torment that impeded their ability to properly grieve and move forward with their lives. The case had ascended to become one of Montana's most baffling missing person enigmas. Law enforcement officials privately acknowledged that they had exhausted all conventional search methodologies and investigative techniques. The absolute absence of evidence was, in itself, a peculiar clue, suggesting that whatever had befallen the Brennan brothers had occurred in a location so remote, or effectively concealed that traditional search strategies could not penetrate it. Local newspapers occasionally revisited the narrative, particularly during the summer months when outdoor pursuits intensified and the prospect of new revelations seemed more plausible. The Brennan triplets had become woven into the fabric of local lore, serving as a cautionary account of the perils inherent in wilderness camping and a stark reminder of how swiftly individuals could vanish without a trace within Montana's expansive landscapes. As winter approached in 2017, the Brennan family faced their third Christmas without any knowledge of their son's ultimate destiny. The auto repair shop remained operational, though business had unfortunately declined as Tom Brennan found it increasingly challenging to maintain his focus on work. The apartment that the triplets had shared remained precisely as they had left it, a silent testament to three young men whose fate remained one of Montana's most profound unsolved mysteries. The winter of 2017 unfolded slowly for the Brennan family. Each passing day brought the same crushing uncertainty that had defined their existence for over 2 years. Linda Brennan had established a routine of monitoring missing persons websites and social media groups dedicated to locating lost hikers. She engaged in correspondence with families across the nation facing similar predicaments, exchanging theories and offering support while desperately hoping that someone might possess information pertaining to her sons. In March of 2018, an unexpected development breathed new vitality into the case. A technology firm based in Seattle, engaged in developing advanced drone systems for search and rescue operations, approached the Flathead County Sheriff's Office with a proposal to utilize the Brennan case as a trial for their innovative equipment. The drones were outfitted with high-resolution cameras, thermal imaging sensors, and artificial intelligence software designed to detect anomalous patterns or objects within wilderness environments. Deputy Rebecca Stone, who had never ceased contemplating the missing triplets, immediately recognized the potential of this groundbreaking technology. The drones could access areas that posed excessive danger or were too remote for ground teams, and their sophisticated sensors might indeed identify evidence that human searchers had overlooked. She persuaded Sheriff Walsh to endorse the experimental search operation, despite budgetary constraints and the skepticism harbored by some department members. The drone search was scheduled for late April of 2018, a period when weather conditions were projected to be optimal and snow cover minimal. The technology company provided 3 state-of-the-art drones and 2 skilled operators experienced in search and rescue missions. The plan involved conducting systematic flights over a 50-square-mile area, with a particular focus on regions that had proven challenging to search thoroughly during previous ground operations. Linda Brennan harbored a cautious optimism regarding the drone search, although 3 years of accumulated disappointment had instilled in her the wisdom to temper her expectations. She and Tom traveled to the command post established near the original search vicinity, bringing coffee and sandwiches for the search team. Observing the sleek drones preparing for flight, she allowed herself to entertain the hope that technology might finally provide the answers that human efforts had failed to unearth. The inaugural day of drone operations covered familiar territory, retracing the path the triplets had taken toward Hidden Lake and expanding outwards in precise grid patterns. The high-resolution cameras captured thousands of images, which were promptly analyzed by computer software engineered to identify any anomalies within the natural environment. Hours elapsed without significant discoveries, yet the detailed footage afforded investigators the most comprehensive visual record of the search area they had ever possessed. On the second day, the drone operators broadened their scope to encompass areas deemed too remote or inaccessible during prior endeavors. One drone was equipped with specialized sensors, capable of detecting metallic objects concealed beneath vegetation or debris. The operators proceeded methodically, flying predetermined flight paths while the artificial intelligence software processed incoming data in real time. At approximately 2:15 in the afternoon, one of the drones detected an anomaly within a densely wooded section of forest, approximately 6 miles from the initial search zone. The thermal imaging indicated a geometric configuration inconsistent with the natural topography, suggesting the presence of man-made objects. The drone descended for a closer inspection, its cameras focusing on what appeared to be fabric, partially obscured by fallen branches and accumulated forest detritus. This discovery was immediately communicated to the command post, where Deputy Stone and the Brennan family watched the live video feed with mounting excitement and apprehension. The drone's cameras revealed what appeared to be the corner of a tent. Its sapphire textile was hardly discernible through the natural concealment of fallen branches and pine needles. The site was situated in a small glade, encircled by a dense woodland, accessible solely by trekking through exceptionally arduous terrain. Within a matter of hours, a ground contingent was assembled to reach the locale, pinpointed by the aerial surveillance drone. The hike necessitated specialized gear and seasoned climbers, as the landscape encompassed steep inclines, precarious rock formations, and dense undergrowth requiring meticulous navigation. The group comprised Deputy Stone, 2 park custodians, a forensic scientist, and a photographer tasked with documenting any findings. The expedition to the drone-identified location took close to 4 hours of deliberate hiking through some of the most challenging topography in the vicinity. The team had to rappel down a sheer cliff face and traverse a swiftly flowing brook that was not indicated on any official charts. The isolation of this spot explained why earlier search endeavors had never reached this sector, despite the vast scale of the initial inquiry. Upon finally arriving at the glade, the ground team encountered a tableau that appeared to have been preserved in time for approximately 3 years. A cerulean camping tent had partially caved in under the weight of accumulated branches and forest detritus. The tent's fabric had faded and was rent in multiple places, yet it was unmistakably the shelter the Brennan triplets had brought with them on their final camping excursion. The scene confirmed everyone's gravest apprehensions, while concurrently yielding the first tangible evidence of the brothers' fate. The perimeter around the tent was meticulously photographed and recorded before any articles were disturbed. The forensic specialist observed that the campsite seemed to have been abruptly vacated, with personal effects strewn about the tent and no indications of a structured departure. A camping stove rested beside a cold fire pit, and fishing paraphernalia was arranged as though the brothers had been preparing for a morning of angling when an unforeseen event interrupted their plans. Within the collapsed tent, investigators discovered sleeping bags, personal garments, and other camping provisions belonging to the triplets. The items were in various states of deterioration following 3 years of exposure to the mountain elements, but they provided irrefutable confirmation that Jake, Luke, and Cole Brennan had reached this remote destination. Nevertheless, the brothers themselves were nowhere to be found, intensifying the enigma of their vanishing. The revelation generated more questions than it answered. How had the triplets journeyed 6 miles from their intended destination to this secluded clearing? Why had they abandoned their campsite and all their equipment? Most critically, where were they at present? The tent and its contents suggested they had occupied this spot for at least 1 night, but there were no overt indications of what transpired subsequently. Deputy Stone promptly contacted the command center to report the finding, and within hours, additional personnel were en route to the remote campsite. The Brennan family was apprised of the discovery, and Linda Brennan's reaction was a blend of relief at finally obtaining some answers and renewed anguish at the confirmation that something terrible had befallen her sons. The campsite was treated as a potential crime scene, although there were no apparent signs of aggression or struggle. Every item was meticulously catalogued and photographed prior to its removal for further scrutiny. The forensic unit canvassed the surrounding environs for any supplementary clues, including possible burial sites or evidence indicating the direction the brothers might have taken upon leaving their camp. As word of the discovery disseminated, media interest resurfaced in the Brennan case with heightened intensity. The drone technology instrumental in the discovery was lauded as a significant advancement in search and rescue operations. While the mystery surrounding the triplets' activities after abandoning their campsite captivated public attention, the narrative of 3 identical brothers who had disappeared without a trace took another unexpected turn, presenting both revelations and new queries to a case that had perplexed investigators for years. The forensic examination of the abandoned campsite commenced immediately, with every piece of evidence carefully transported to the State Crime Laboratory in Helena. The tent and its contents were scrutinized for fingerprints, DNA evidence, and any indicators that might elucidate why the Brennan triplets had departed their shelter and vanished into the wilderness. The condition of the articles suggested they had been exposed to the elements for the entire 3 years since the brothers' disappearance, complicating the investigation, though not rendering it impossible. Dr. Patricia Wells, the state's chief forensic analyst, spearheaded the examination of the recovered materials. Her initial assessment corroborated that the camping equipment belonged to the missing triplets, with serial numbers aligning with items on the gear manifest provided to investigators by their parents. The sleeping bags contained hair samples that subsequent DNA analysis would confirm belonged to Jake, Luke, and Cole Brennan. However, the forensic findings raised troubling questions regarding the sequence of events. The arrangement of items within the tent implied the brothers had been asleep when an event compelled them to depart hastily. The sleeping bags were unzipped and pushed aside, as if their occupants had risen abruptly during the night. Personal effects such as wallets, watches, and medications were left behind, indicating the brothers had not planned an extended absence from their campsite. Most perplexing was the discovery of 3 pairs of hiking boots lined up neatly outside the tent entrance, suggesting the brothers had exited their campsite barefoot or in socks. Deputy Stone returned to the remote campsite with a larger investigative contingent, including cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar equipment. The expanded search concentrated on the area immediately surrounding the tent, seeking any indications of the brothers' movements after abandoning their shelter. The terrain adjacent to the campsite was perilous, featuring steep precipices, dense foliage, and rocky outcrops that could readily conceal evidence or pose risks to inexperienced trekkers. The cadaver dogs exhibited interest in several zones near the campsite, but failed to locate any human remains. The handlers noted that 3 years of weathering could have dispersed scent trails beyond the dogs' detection capabilities. Ground-penetrating radar scans of the vicinity revealed no buried objects or disturbed soil that might suggest burial sites. The search extended in concentric circles from the tent's position, but no additional evidence was unearthed. Analysis of the campsite's location revealed why it had remained concealed for so long. The clearing was situated in a natural depression surrounded by tall pine trees, rendering it invisible from aerial surveillance. The pathway to the site was so arduous that even experienced hikers would be unlikely to discover it by chance. The brothers had either found this location through careful exploration or had been guided there by someone familiar with the area. Weather records from July 2015 indicated that the region had experienced several severe thunderstorms during the period the triplets were camping. One particularly potent storm had occurred on July 18th, 3 days after the brothers commenced their trip. Investigators theorized that the storm might have compelled the triplets to seek refuge in the remote clearing where they had erected their tent and awaited improved conditions. The discovery of the abandoned campsite instigated a renewed search for the missing brothers, focusing on areas within walking distance of the tent. Search teams meticulously explored every ravine, creek bed, and potential shelter within a 5-mile radius. The prevailing theory was that the brothers had left their campsite for an unspecified reason and had become lost or injured while attempting to return. Nevertheless, after 2 weeks of intensive searching, no trace of the triplets was found. Linda Brennan visited the campsite location once the forensic team had concluded their work. The trek to reach the secluded glade was physically taxing, and she required assistance from park rangers to navigate the challenging terrain. Standing in the spot where her sons had spent their final known hours, she experienced a mixture of closure and renewed sorrow. The finding of the tent confirmed that something had happened to her boys, but it did not resolve the fundamental question of their present whereabouts. The investigation broadened to include interviews with anyone who might have been in the area during July 2015. Park rangers, hunting guides, and local inhabitants were questioned about any unusual activities or sightings during that time frame. Several individuals reported observing unfamiliar vehicles on remote forest roads, but none of the descriptions could be definitively connected to the Brennan case. The immense wilderness area made it impossible to track every individual who might have been camping or hiking during the relevant period. One intriguing lead emerged from Walter Kowalski, a retired Forest Service employee who had been conducting an unofficial wildlife survey in the region during the summer of 2015. Kowalski reported seeing 3 young men matching the triplets. Description: near a creek, approximately 2 miles from the discovered campsite. According to his account, the men appeared to be following someone else, though he could not discern who was leading them. The sighting had occurred during daylight hours, and the men seemed composed and unhurried. Kowalski's testimony was significant, as it suggested the brothers had left their campsite voluntarily and were following someone they trusted. This contradicted theories that they had fled their tent in panic or had become disoriented while exploring the area. The witness description placed the sighting on July 19th, which would have been the day before the triplets were scheduled to return home. However, Kowalski admitted he had not considered the encounter significant at the time and had not reported it during the original investigation. The possibility that the brothers had encountered another individual in the wilderness opened new investigative avenues. Detectives began researching individuals known to frequent the remote expanses of Glacier National Park, including hermits, poachers, and those seeking to evade authorities. The investigation revealed that several individuals lived off the grid in the region, sustaining themselves through hunting, fishing, and evading detection by park rangers. One name that surfaced during this phase of the inquiry was Marcus Thornfield, a 45-year-old former military veteran who had been residing in the wilderness for over a decade. Thornfield had been apprehended multiple times for illegal camping and hunting infractions, but he had consistently managed to retreat into the forest before authorities could prosecute him effectively. Rangers characterized him as intelligent, resourceful, and potentially dangerous when cornered. Efforts to locate Thornfield proved fruitless, as he lacked a permanent residence and moved frequently throughout the vast wilderness. His last known interaction with authorities had been in 2014, when he received a citation for illegal camping near Bowman Lake. Since then, he had effectively disappeared, though intermittent reports suggested he was still living somewhere in the park's remote areas. The investigation into Thornfield's background uncovered a troubled individual who had struggled to reintegrate into civilian life following military service. He had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and had a history of avoiding contact with others. However, there was no evidence directly linking him to the Brennan triplets' disappearance, and his potential involvement remained purely speculative. As autumn 2018 approached, the investigation had reached another frustrating impasse. The discovery of the abandoned campsite had provided critical insights into the brothers' final days, but it had not illuminated their ultimate fate. The tent and its contents were stored in the evidence facility, silent testaments to a mystery that continued to confound investigators and torment the Brennan family. The case had evolved from a straightforward missing persons inquiry into something far more intricate and unsettling. 3 young men had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only an abandoned tent and more questions than answers. The wilderness that had claimed them remained silent, guarding its secrets amidst the towering pines and rugged peaks of Montana's most secluded regions. The winter of 2018 brought a temporary cessation to active search operations, but the investigation persisted through other means. Deputy Stone dedicated countless hours to reviewing case files, studying maps, and pursuing every lead that had emerged since the discovery of the abandoned campsite. The forensic evidence had undergone thorough analysis. Witness statements had been verified, and every conceivable theory had been explored. Yet, the fundamental question remained unresolved. What had transpired with Jake, Luke, and Cole Brennan after they departed their tent in that remote clearing? In February 2019, an unexpected breakthrough emerged from an unlikely source. Jennifer Hayes, a graduate student at the University of Montana, was researching historical land use patterns in Glacier National Park when she unearthed references to an old mining operation active in the early 1900s. The mining claims were situated in the same general vicinity where the triplets' campsite had been found, and Hayes discovered records indicating that several mine shafts and tunnels still existed in the area. The historical records indicated that the Copper Creek Mining Company had operated in the region from 1902 to 1918, extracting copper and silver from subterranean deposits. When the venture became unprofitable, the company had abandoned the site without adequately sealing all the mine entrances. Over the ensuing decades, many of these openings had become obscured by vegetation and natural erosion, posing potential dangers to anyone exploring the area. Deputy Stone immediately recognized the significance of this revelation. Mine shafts could readily account for how 3 individuals could disappear without a trace, particularly if they had fallen into an opening concealed by foliage or debris. She organized a specialized team comprising mine safety experts and cave rescue specialists to search for any disused mine entrances in proximity to the campsite. The search for mine openings proved exceptionally challenging due to the terrain and the passage of time since the mining operation had ceased. Numerous potential entrances were completely overgrown or had collapsed decades prior. However, after 3 days of meticulous exploration, the team discovered a partially concealed mine shaft approximately 1 mile from where the tent had been located. The opening was hidden beneath fallen logs and dense vegetation, rendering it almost imperceptible to casual observation. The mine shaft descended at a steep angle into the mountainside, with wooden support beams that had rotted and given way in several places. The opening was sufficiently large for a person to fall through, especially in darkness or adverse weather conditions. Mine safety experts determined that the shaft was exceedingly hazardous, with unstable walls and the potential for toxic gases that had accumulated over the decades since the mine's abandonment. A specialized cave rescue team was dispatched to explore the mine shaft safely. Utilizing ropes, breathing apparatus, and powerful illumination equipment, they descended into the subterranean passages that extended deep into the mountain. The mine comprised multiple tunnels and chambers, some of which had partially collapsed over the years. The rescue team worked methodically, examining every accessible area for any sign of the missing triplets. On the 2nd day of the underground search, the rescue team made a discovery that would finally provide answers to the Brennan family's 3-year ordeal. In a chamber approximately 200 feet below the surface, they found human remains alongside personal effects belonging to the missing brothers. The condition of the remains and the items suggested that the triplets had fallen into the mine shaft and had been unable to escape the subterranean passages. The recovery operation spanned several days due to the hazardous conditions and the necessity of preserving evidence for the investigation. Each item was meticulously documented and photographed before its removal from the mine. The personal effects included wallets, jewelry, and clothing that definitively identified the remains as those of Jake, Luke, and Cole Brennan. The discovery brought an end to one of Montana's most perplexing missing person cases, though it also brought profound sorrow to the family that had never ceased hoping for their son's safe return. The investigation concluded that the triplets had likely exited their campsite during the night, possibly to investigate a noise or attend to a bodily need, and had accidentally fallen into the concealed mine shaft. The darkness and unfamiliar terrain would have rendered it impossible for them to perceive the hidden danger until it was too late. Once underground, they would have been trapped in the labyrinth of tunnels, with no means of signaling for help or finding their way back to the surface. Linda Brennan received the news with a mixture of devastating grief and relief that the uncertainty was finally over. After 3 years of not knowing what had happened to her sons, she could finally commence the process of mourning and healing. The discovery provided the closure the family had desperately needed, even though the answers came in the form of tragedy rather than the miracle they had hoped for. The Brennan case prompted significant modifications in how search and rescue operations are conducted in Montana's wilderness areas. The utilization of drone technology became standard procedure for missing person investigations, and historical research into potential hazards like abandoned mines became a routine component of search planning. The case also spurred initiatives to identify and properly mark dangerous mine openings throughout the state's public lands. A memorial service for the triplets was held in Billings, attended by hundreds of individuals who had been affected by the family's ordeal and the community's response to the tragedy. The brothers were remembered not merely as victims of a terrible accident, but as young men who had lived their lives with joy, adventure, and an unbreakable bond with one another. Their story served as a reminder of both the beauty and the concealed perils of Montana's wild regions. The auto repair shop, which had remained closed since the brothers' disappearance, was finally reopened as a memorial garage, with proceeds benefiting search and rescue operations across the state. Tom Brennan returned to work, finding solace in maintaining the business that his sons had helped him establish. The shop became a communal gathering place where people could share memories of the triplets and support the family's ongoing process of healing. Deputy Rebecca Stone, who had never relinquished her pursuit of answers, was promoted to detective in recognition of her unwavering dedication to the case. She continued to handle missing person investigations, applying the lessons learned from the Brennan case to assist other families facing similar ordeals. The case remained a defining moment in her career, demonstrating the importance of persistence, emerging technologies, and thorough investigation in resolving even the most enigmatic disappearances. The subterranean passage where the three inseparable siblings were located has been permanently secured to avert any future calamities, and cautionary markers have been erected across the vicinity to apprise trekkers of the inherent perils associated with disused extraction sites. The secluded encampment where their shelter had been uncovered transformed into an impromptu tribute ground, frequented by relatives and companions who wished to honor the brothers in the very location where they had spent their concluding moments together. The narrative concerning the Brennan trio functions as a stark admonishment that even seasoned adventurers can confront unforeseen hazards in the wild. Their vanishing and subsequent unveiling underscored the critical necessity of stringent safety measures, reliable emergency communication tools, and the profound significance of apprising others of precise itineraries when venturing into isolated territories. Most crucially, their account exemplified the potent force of familial affection, collective solidarity, and the unyielding resolve to maintain optimism even when confronted with what appeared to be insurmountable challenges. The official conclusion of their case occurred in 2019, yet the influence of the Brennan triplet saga continues to echo across Montana and further afield. Their remembrance endures through the enhanced search and rescue protocols their ordeal helped forge within the hearts of kin and comrades who will forever cherish their memory, and as a perpetual reminder that each individual who ventures into the natural world carries the aspirations and anxieties of those who hold them dear. The majestic peaks of Montana harbor numerous mysteries, but at times, through perseverance, innovation, and a touch of fortune, these enigmas can ultimately be brought to light, offering solace to those who remain.